So why even bother with this? I mean, business is running good, right? The economy, it's not 2009 anymore. So, business is still pretty good. Okay, well, we really need to understand that sustainability isn't a thing, a program, or a goal. It is actually kind of a mindset where we have to really take a look at how we are developing and running and practicing our businesses to achieve prosperity, people benefits, and also things that we don't deplete. Again, there's a lot of words here, but if you really look at that for just a second, there is a limited quantity of material in this world, and the more we use, okay, everybody, oh, we're going to use it up. Well, don't worry about that. When you're trying to do a return on capital employed, the more we use, the more it costs to buy it, right? Because that's supply and demand. So let's take a look at, the corporate call to action here. First, there's some new and maybe not so new challenges. Global warming and the climate change, resource availability and cost. We see steel moving up and down in price. Energy, gas is certainly one that we see moving all around. And intensified regulatory controls. Whether you believe in global warming or not is not so important as the fact that you will be regulated by it, as if it's occurring. New market trends. The green badge and stakeholder engagement is very, very big. People like Walmart evaluate the sustainability. They give somebody a sustainability index on all of their suppliers before they qualify them for a contract. New industry trends. There's new environmental management systems that we have to be aware of, either from government regulations, state or local. Reduced on-site technical resources, and I think anybody sitting here that lived through 2009 knows that it's pretty easy to have technical resources and human resources lowered. And then there are new industry trends where people are setting sustainability goals as corporations. So if we look at what are the kind of qualities that companies need to really set up a good sustainable development program. I put the 3 companies over there because there's something called the Sustainable 100. You can find it on the internet, it's footnoted on the bottom. But GE, P&G, and TNT, 3 very different companies, are all considered the top 3 sustainable companies in the world currently. So what does that entail? It's top-down management support. Their top management believes in it and is committed to it. That's incredibly important. Sustainable development is central to the business strategy. It's part of their strategy. And you can go through these, but organizational integration. That's one that's kind of near and dear to my heart because it's not just the researchers working on sustainable development. It has to be your senior management, your marketing, your safety people, your manufacturing people. So these are the company qualities that really kind of stand out for companies that want to take advantage of sustainable development. So how do we apply this to a metalworking fluid? So the technical areas we've got is the use of alternative synthetic and alternative chemical pathways. Use of alternate reaction conditions, trying to lower the energy inputs. Design of chemicals that are inherently safer than current materials, and that has been a tremendous push in the last 10 years. The use of renewable or recycled feedstocks. Okay, that's been really unpopular. And it's becoming more and more a necessity for companies to do this to ensure that we keep the price or the economic viability of products where we need to. And the avoidance of persistent bioaccumulative and toxic substances. If you saw that last part where we went to the biostatics on that timeline, the biggest effect of that environmentally was the removal of tremendously toxic materials that were in there for reasons that really had nothing to do with machining. It was all about the preservation. It was the removal of biocides by putting alternate materials in there that were nowhere near as toxic. Increased energy efficiency. These are things like if you've ever been to a manufacturing plant, the use of waste heat for heating materials or preheating materials with the use of waste heat instead of gas firing it. These types of increased energy efficiency helps the overall economic effectiveness. And then last but not least, the use of green analytical methods in processing. There's a lot of things that are done in the chemical industry that people don't quite see on a day-to-day basis that have been removed from the process simply because of the toxicity associated with them. Okay, so the benefits, I'm just going to throw these up here. You've got environmental, social benefits. I'm not going to read those. I'm just going to let you take a look at those real quick. And I stopped on one down here that I think is important, and that's reducing potential industrial liability. You can have the best running program in the world, most cost-effective program in the world, but if somebody gets hurt or you have a claim against you, that has destroyed profitability for a year in that process. And then lastly, the kind of to catch it back up, that it sounds like we're trying to be just, you know, Mr. Green Jeans and be all safe. None of this can happen if these are not economically viable. So if it is not an economically viable process, then it really can't be sustainable. I'll give you an example, a real simple example. Let's say that we move to a non-oil chemistry. Well, we know that there's lower air handling costs because we don't have the oil gumming up the air handlers. There's a direct lower usage, so we have a direct chemical cost reduction. We're going to recycle it. It recycles a lot easier. Okay, so we got a chemical cost reduction, and we're going to do better on the tool life. So we know that there's tremendous savings involved with that. Now, over the past maybe 15 years, we never even saw these two columns. We just looked at this. But if we take a step back and say, okay, so what do those changes do from an environmental impact and also a social impact? Was that a sustainable change? And if you go through this, you're reducing your number of reportables. Your corporate insurance has a lot to do with how many reportables you have. Okay, reduce disposal. Well, there's a cost associated with disposal. There's also a risk carrying it across the road. Who owns the title of the material when it's being disposed of? Going all the way through here. Then if we look at the social, you have a greenhouse gas reduction, reduced raw material usage. So we had kind of ignored these two things because we were in such a race to hit this economic side that we forgot that there are these other two pieces equally important. So how would that look in a project? The way I'd like to see it is like a ladder approach. Okay, we don't have to capture everything in the first 2 minutes when we do something. So let's say we make that change that we just talked about. So we changed into fluid. Maybe we eliminated DCHA, dicyclohexamine. Okay, reduced the mist in the area. Okay, the operators were complaining about the mist, so now we've reduced the mist in the area, so the operators have a better and a safer location to work in, and there's no operator discomfort. We talk about return on capital employed. It's hard to get a return on capital employed when the guy is in the nurse's office complaining about a sore throat. So we got that day one. Okay, so now let's look a couple months out. Are we able to extend the sump life? Well, if we do that, we're going to reduce the chemical usage, reduce the water usage, and reduce your wastewater treatment expenses. Okay, so that's a great benefit. Okay, so let's take another one. Okay, so now we're 3 months out there. How's the tooling? Have we improved the tooling? If you improve the tooling, now we're looking at reduced costs. That's very economic. Lower material usage. That's actually a social and economic thing. And improved productivity. So now we're talking about more cash in a product because we're not taking the time to change tools as frequently. So one more step. Let's take a look at the energy inputs. If we're improving the tooling, it's probably because there's a force reduction. That force reduction turns into an electrical reduction. So now you have lower energy required, and since you're putting a lower energy in there, that creates a greenhouse gas emission credit for you if you do the calculations. So as we look at this, one simple change of a fluid has been able to give you these 4 different steps, increasing the sustainable impact of that process. So that's how we like to look at it from a sustainability standpoint. So now let's go back to that business model. I'm not going to kid you, everything still revolves around shareholder return. Okay, so now we move into those business goals. Those are still there. We still have business goals. We're always going to be given those. Okay, and we still have to have a corporate strategy that helps us design those to achieve those business goals. And we still have to overcome business issues. But now let's put a couple of other pieces in here. So if we look at it, the traditional model was a bit shallow. If we look at the sustainable model, now we're adding sustainability goals which have an economic, environmental, and social impact. And to achieve those, it's going to require innovation in the metalworking fluids and in these processes, and that's what we're focused on. So hopefully you understand that this business model is really going to become kind of a mainstay model for a lot of manufacturing, and you can change this from metalworking to paperclip manufacturing to paper reaming. It doesn't matter, but this is going to be a critical piece in understanding the components of sustainability, and the importance of sustainability is why this will be successful. So thank you.